It's Nolan.
Now, before we get started, make sure y'all hitting that like button. Make sure y'all sharing it on your respective platforms. Let somebody know what we're doing today. Now, let's get into the show.
Overworked and underpaid, that's the product of my days. Every beat is getting slayed, fuck whoever that debate. Niggas don't know my life on the side overseas, like twice road rhymes for these fake MCs. Got them popping in the streets, but they never gon' share my light. Nigga, I got bills to pay, y'all can't feel the weight. It's not a real debate, I been grinding, bitch, I knew to get signed, but I been giving them everything. Shit is dope with the kid, me never respected the prices. Nah, homie, don't come round here with the fuck shit. I'ma twist a cap on a nigga like mustard. All these so-called pros can't trust it. Try to look them up, but these niggas ain't done shit. Dedicate 10 years, figure make a dollar, that's me. I was killing shit way before IG. No TikTok, I was dope in 03. Now everybody wanna come get a piece. Drummer cannon knew that I was plotting, planning, got the flavor. Tropicana by the beach, we got cabanas, monkey business. Best believe we got banana sway. Pin game, coin great, cold like pave, flow like Andre, step like Unsa.
What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, your number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everybody's doing well out there today on this Thursday afternoon. We're going to be getting into Drake's response to UMG's motion to dismiss. Remember, he had, roughly 2.5, 3 weeks to get his response in. Remember, UMG just put theirs in on the 7th, I believe, where they submitted their motion to dismiss his lawsuit. Just a few days ago, we got the approval from the amicus brief of a group of scholars who want to add context as to the history of rap battles, the purpose of rap battles, how things get said in exaggeration or hyperbole in rap battles, how things are not to be necessarily taken literally in rap battles, although they may draw from things that happen in people's lives, things that you've said, things that you've done, etc. The overall sentiment is to get under the skin of your opponent. So that's also going to be something moving forward, right? So now we have Drake's response. It is a 35-page response. And I'm going to go ahead and get into it so we don't waste too much time with the pleasantries on the intro. Y'all know how we get down. Y'all know what we do over here. If you're new here, get accustomed to how we rocking, all right? Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so this is Plaintiff as in Aubrey Drake Graham versus UMG Recordings. This is his memorandum of law in opposition to defendant's motion to dismiss the amended complaint, all right? So he wants to make sure that this thing remains alive in the court so that he can fight this case and try to get a large sum out of UMG. And remember, all of this came from even before the battle or during or after the battle. He's trying to renegotiate a new contract with UMG, okay? And because he lost the battle and was devalued in the market after taking said loss, he came to the people with a lawsuit. And then he says, he called me a PDF and it's ruining my life and my career, okay? So, Plaintiff Aubrey Drake Graham respectfully submits this opposition to UMG Recording Inc.'s motion to dismiss plaintiff's amended complaint, ECF numbers 4243, and request for judicial notice. Preliminary statement. The primary question raised by UMG's motion to dismiss is whether Drake's amended complaint plausibly argues that a reasonable listener could have concluded that Not Like Us and its accompanying cover art and music video were conveying facts about Drake. All right. The crux, the bane of Drake's existence is Not Like Us. Okay. The song took a life of its own. It damn near it basically superseded the battle. It superseded hip hop. It became a pop success. It became a global success. It became a unanimous hit that even people that don't listen to or appreciate hip hop came to love, right? So this is really fucking him up. So it says the AC, as an amended complaint, does not just allege that reasonable listeners could have reached that conclusion. It plausibly alleges that millions in fact did so. As the amended complaint alleges, the unmistakable message conveyed by the recording, image, and video is the indisputably false allegation that Drake is a certified PDF. The recording calls for violence against Drake. No, the fuck it doesn't. And the image offers aspiring assailants a map of where to strike. Oh my God. Oh my God. An overhead photograph of Drake's actual Toronto home plastered with icons known to identify the location of child SOs. As if this man had never actually told us where he lived, showed us where he lived. Like I said, they have been treating this man's Toronto house like a motherfucking memorial. I don't mean memorial as in death, you know what I'm saying? Because I know some people may have misinterpreted that way, but just a memorial. Like this was like a fucking tourist attraction. He told people where he lived in his song 7 a.m. on Bridle Path. That's the fucking street. Anyway, UMG's theory is that all of this was hyperbole, a harmless joke that no reasonable person would take seriously because it was part of a rap battle, the same way that you were able to use hyperbole to describe Kendrick as a domestic abuser. But of course, you don't want to be held accountable for your own words or actions, or alleging that this man has an illegitimate child that actually is his friends and business partners. Basically saying that his fiance is a pass around, taunting his fiance on a song, telling her to drop that ass, shake that ass for free. But none of that matters because as long as your feelings are hurt, nobody else's matter. We'll continue. But UMG's theory collides with the reality that the recordings, false allegations of PDF activity, broadcast to the entire world via the most powerful music company, have proven to be toxic and indelible. In other words, UMG's just joking narrative runs headfirst into the concrete facts alleged in the amended complaint. Except that as true as they must be here, the AC's allegations established that Not Like Us was not widely understood to be mere hyperbole days after UMG published the recording and image. Drake's home was attacked and the security guard was nearly unalived. Okay, so they went from he was attacked to saying he was nearly unalived. They tripling, doubling, flipping, and doubling down. They ran 50 different yapping on your ass. Boy, give it up. In the weeks that followed, countless listeners showed that they believed the allegations to be true as confirmed by the commentators and press that covered the song. What about the press that covered your actual attack at your home, who said it on live television that it was connected to the beef you had with The Weeknd? What about those press coverages? If I had time to go to Ghost of J Nolan Past, I would, because I covered it on my channel. Nor can UMG hide behind its hyperbole mantra, given its decision long after the rap battle had ended and Drake had informed UMG of the substantial harm the recording had caused. Oh, your feelings. To transform false accusations of PDF activity into a de facto national anthem. Not a national anthem. By using its massive resources to land the recording as the centerpiece of the Super Bowl, the Grammys, and more. Oh, how would you have loved to have Family Matters replace it? Unable to address the actual facts Drake has alleged, UMG instead asked this court to ignore them as unreliable and replace them with UMG's own disputed allegations offered through a 17-exhibit RJN. Through these cherry-picked exhibits, which include news articles, podcast transcripts, and lyrics dating back years, UMG paints a self-serving picture of the context in which the recording was initially published, one that is irreconcilable with the context pleaded in the AC. What about... Yo, bruh, you need your ass whooped from here to Albuquerque. I'm sorry. And I know you got to do this in order to attempt to keep your lawsuit active, but dog, you're not embarrassed? Not even as a rapper, as a man, as a human being, you're not embarrassed yet? God damn. And before you Drakeazoids get in my motherfucking comments mad, oh my God, you're siding with UMG. Yes, the fuck I am today, and will be for the duration of this case. I don't give a fuck what you're talking about. My feelings ain't got nothing to do with this goddamn case. And for you stupid motherfuckers talking about something, you're gonna end up getting sourced in his lawsuit. I don't give a fuck. It ain't the first time. We just got sourced in another one the other day. I don't give a fuck at this point. I'm not privy to any hidden information. So what could they do to me? I didn't do it. I didn't make the song. I didn't make nobody like it more than they liked it before they heard it. See the All right, let's get back to it. Through these cherry-picked exhibits, which include news articles, podcast transcripts, and lyrics dating back years, UMG paints a self-serving picture of the context in which the recording was initially published, meaning that people was already calling you a PDF or wondering if you had such activity going on in your circle way before it was ever put on wax via Kendrick Lamar. Unsurprisingly, courts do not permit these kinds of tactics at the motion to dismiss stage. Okay, maybe they're not going to dismiss it. They're just going to have to elaborate in court. Have a good time with that. But even if the court were to accept UMG's disputed construction of the context, there is no indication that the average listener watching the Super Bowl or browsing top hits on Spotify would have any knowledge of the nuances of a multi-year rap battle, let alone the subjective interpretation spun by UMG's lawyers here. That's why you have a whole discography. That's what music discovery is all about. What you didn't know then, you come to know now. Even if this court were inclined to agree with UMG's improper factual narrative, the MTD would still fail because the AC pleads facts showing that the defamatory statements imply that they are based upon undisclosed facts, rendering them mixed opinion at most. In response, UMG argues, based again on extrinsic and disputed evidence, that listeners understood the recording to be referring merely to rumors concerning Drake's relationships with minors. He said, "I heard," which, like UMG's other arguments, cannot be squared with the AC's actual allegations, including that listeners understood the recording to be based upon actual and undisclosed information. Not only is this argument procedurally improper and unsupported by UMG's own exhibits, it also disproves UMG's main argument. Any listeners who were sufficiently clued in to understand that the recording was actually referencing prior questions raised about Drake's relationships with minors surely would have understood the lyrics as factual and not just hyperbolic name-calling. If you think people were understanding these lyrics as factual, then you might as well just accept them as fact, bucko. If you are that offended, you might as well come out and say you got me. The AC also properly alleges a claim under Section 349 of the New York General Business Law. The AC pleads how UMG secretly paid directly or indirectly streaming and radio platforms and others to boost the recording. No, they did not. UMG's failure to disclose these acts and practices deceived consumers of music in New York and harmed Drake. No, it did not. Both as an artist and consumer of music, because the botting and artificial streams that UMG funded diluted and diminished Drake's royalties. However, no, it did not. No, it did not. How does one artist's success diminish yours? And where do you expect a judge or jury to think that such a thing could occur? Because one person is big. That's basically you saying, well, because I was eating in the game, nobody else was, but other people was actually eating. And I think there's a stronger case that at the height of your career, you diminished people way more than Kendrick Lamar could have single-handedly diminished you. Especially because they keep reporting all these records you continue to break in streaming. So who's not streaming Drake? Out of your fan base, anyway. UMG's arguments mostly seek to impose pleading requirements that do not exist, such as a requirement to plead actual knowledge or that the deceptive acts and practices were the but-for cause of the recording's success. As for Drake's harassment claim, New York courts have long recognized that individuals may sue under Section 240.26 of the Penal Code. Not to mention, when Spotify went and did clearance on bots, Kendrick was not affected. Many other artists were. Drake sufficiently pleads that UMG intended to harass, annoy, or alarm Drake through its year-long publication and promotion of the defamatory material, especially after UMG knew about the violence and harm Drake was already experiencing. So they just, oh boy. For all of these reasons, the MTD and RJN should be denied. The amicus brief raises interesting academic issues, but particularly at the pleading stage, offers no guidance for this court. But the judge allowed it. No authority supports the proposition that rap music can never defame a subject of that music, regardless of the actual words and imagery used in the music, the specific context of and around the song, or evidence of how listeners actually understood it. And in any event, this MTD is not the appropriate vehicle by which to announce such a sweeping legal policy. All this tells me is for everybody that thinks this is going to get dismissed, it's not. Now, that doesn't mean that Drake is going to win. I don't think he will. But do I think that his lawsuit will be dismissed? No, I told y'all that from the jump. Because I do think that this is going to be something that needs to be looked into further. Drake is going to have to answer, were you in a rap battle or not? Right? Because you're playing this out as if you're just some unsuspecting victim that just got dissed on a song out of nowhere. So what happened? What is the run of events? Right? We're going to have to go back and expand upon the entire timeline. You went back and forth with this man and said you made physical threats. You made unfounded allegations in your song, right? You're requesting a jury trial. So if you think that a jury is not going to have any understanding, and they may not have a severe, you know what I'm saying, understanding of how a rap battle works, but they are going to understand how trading insults works in the real world. But we'll continue. Background: the recording, first published by UMG on May 4th, 2024, accuses Drake of being a criminal PDF. The recording identifies Drake by name and states that based on undisclosed facts and sources, Drake has a predilection for underage girls, not women. Somebody said that to me before. I agree. Say Drake, I hear you like I'm young. The next line threatens that Drake should be careful not to go to prison where child predators are targeted. You better not ever go to cell block 1. The recording says that women who fall in love with Drake should be careful to hide their little sister from Drake. The recording accuses Drake of being a convicted PDF, certified lover boy, certified PDFs. Where did he say anything about convicted? In a play on the dual meaning of the word minor, the recording says that Drake trying to strike a chord and is probably a minor. Later, the recording refers to Drake as a predator. You could be a predator in numerous contexts, though, but we'll continue. Having identified Drake as a PDF, the recording repeatedly calls for violence against Drake. The image and video unmistakably reinforce the defamatory allegations in the recording. The image features a satellite view of Drake's Toronto home with location information covered in 13 icons denoting convicted SOs. During the video, the lyrics "trying to strike a chord" and is probably a minor play while Lamar is playing hopscotch, a game for children. Later, during the lyrics stating the predator moving flocks, the video shows large shipping containers commonly associated with trafficking. The portions of the recording, video, and image accusing Drake of being a PDF and or reinforcing that accusation are referred to herein as the defamatory statements. Notwithstanding that the defamatory statements were a part of a rap battle, millions of listeners understood them as statements of fact. This included social media users. See also MTD, NPR. NPR knew it was a rap battle. A lot of social media people knew it was a rap battle. Yes, there were some new people, some noobs, some casuals, and a lot of them. But you can't discount the people that also knew, because some people didn't. Others understood the defamatory statements were based on undisclosed facts, and many understood that the image conveyed Drake as an SO. All the while, UMG took unprecedented steps to ensure the broadest possible reach of the recording, such as whitelisting the recording to ensure content creators would republish it. Content creators were already republishing it before they were whitelisted. The whitelisting lifted the copyright for a lot of people. It wasn't incentivized up front. It was the fact that people had already reviewed the song and some people that knew Kendrick said, "Yo, bruh, you gotta let it fly." So he lifted it. So that's not ensuring, but we'll continue. Foreseeably, violence against Drake ensued. I'm starting to believe all you niggas from Canada are just playing out action films in front of us at this point. Like, y'all niggas are just actors. Should have never embraced some of you niggas. Drake publicly denied the allegations and later explained in detail to UMG how the false defamatory statements were causing him severe harm. In response to that plea from its own artist, UMG doubled down on its promotional activities and effectively dared Drake to initiate legal action. UMG campaigned to secure Grammy Awards for the defamatory material. Then, after promoting Lamar as the headliner for the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show, UMG introduced the recording to a new audience of more than 133.5 million people. Too bad Kendrick had already performed at one Super Bowl, so it was only a matter of time that he would get to headline on his own. The AC further alleges that UMG secretly promoted the recording by paying directly or indirectly various platforms to promote, prioritize, and play the recording. This included UMG's pay-for-play scheme to boost the recording on the radio. That's not how radio works, including in New York. UMG provided financial incentives to Spotify in exchange for Spotify affirmatively recommending the recording to users who search for unrelated songs and artists, something he has no proof of. UMG paid or caused payments to be made to third parties to use bots to artificially inflate the spread of the recording on Spotify, which also took place in part in New York, another claim that he has no proof of. A former stream farmer posted a video on X about the streaming bot that UMG and Kendrick Lamar used to boost Not Like Us. Hearsay. UMG failed to disclose any of these tactics and then touted the recording streaming radio success. Standard of review. To survive a motion to dismiss under the federal rule of civil procedure 12b-6, a complaint must contain sufficient factual matter accepted as true to state a claim to relief that is plausible on its face. On a motion to dismiss, the court draws all reasonable inferences in the plaintiff's favor and accepts as true all non-conclusory allegations of fact. Because a Rule 12b-6 motion challenges the complaint that's presented by the plaintiff, taking no account of its basis in evidence, a court adjudicating such a motion may review only a narrow universe of materials, facts stated on the face of the complaint, documents appended to the complaint or incorporated in the complaint by reference, and matters of which judicial notice may be taken. This is just a roundabout way. This ain't finna get dismissed. All right. The amended complaint adequately pleads defamation. A defamation plaintiff must plead a defamatory statement of fact that is false, published to a third party, and concerning the plaintiff, made with the applicable level of fault on the part of the speaker, either causing special harm or constituting defamation per se, not protected by privilege. A public figure plaintiff must also plead actual malice. The MTD does not seriously dispute the sufficiency of the ACS pleaded. Instead, it challenges only two elements: defamatory statement of fact and actual malice, based almost entirely upon materials extraneous to the AC that, if relevant at all, should be introduced and tested through the adversarial process during discovery. I think discovery is where they're going to whoop your ass, to be honest. The AC adequately alleges that the defamatory statements are statements of fact. In determining whether allegedly defamatory material is fact or non-actionable opinion, the dispositive inquiry is whether a reasonable listener could have concluded that the statements were conveying facts about the plaintiff. Thus, while the question of whether the words could express the alleged defamatory meaning must be resolved by the court in the first instance, the actual meaning of those words must ultimately be determined at trial. Courts in this circuit analyze the Steinhuber factors to help distinguish between fact and opinion. Those factors are: 1, whether the specific language in issue has a precise meaning, which is readily understood; 2, whether the statements are capable of being proven true or false; and 3, whether either the full context of the communication in which the statement appears or the broader social context and surrounding circumstances are such as to signal readers or listeners that is what is being read or heard is likely to be opinion, not fact. Even a cursory review of the allegations in the AC leaves no doubt that reasonable listeners could have concluded that the defamatory statements asserted factual allegations about Drake. Indeed, unlike UMG's cases here, the AC presents actual evidence that listeners as well as commentators in the rap industry and the press understood the defamatory statements as an attempt to convey a precise factual message, PDF activity about Drake, the same thing that he threw out there first on Tailor-Made Freestyle. At the pleading stage, these allegations are more than sufficient. For example, in Palin versus New York Times, the Second Circuit found that statements in a newspaper editorial were capable of being understood as statements of fact, in part because allegations of social media backlash further suggested that the Times readers perceived the false statements as fact-based. Similarly, in Fitosa versus Keem, the court denied defendants' motion to dismiss because reasonable readers could have understood a tweet accusing plaintiff of grooming underage girls to be an actionable statement of fact based on the complaints and allegations, citing social media posts communicating such belief. UMG's own authorities illustrate the same point. In Belavia Blatt versus Crossett v. Kell and Partners, after converting the motion to dismiss to a motion for summary judgment because defendant asked the court to consider extrinsic evidence, the court determined that an online comment constituted non-actionable opinion in part because of the nature of the comments posted by other participants, which said things like, "I respect your opinion," emphasis added. Oh boy. The motion to dismiss also fails to grapple with the reality that the recording, image, and video all work together to reinforce the unmistakable and false factual message that Drake is a PDF. Accusations of SA are especially dangerous because modern listeners are so susceptible to believing them. This is presumably why UMG and its chairman reacted so swiftly, including with threats of legal action when faced with similar accusations. Here, and unlike nearly every example UMG cites, including other songs within the battle, the recording is myopically focused on ensuring that listeners take one message away from the song, "Drake is a PDF." For example, the line "certified lover boys, certified PDFs," which is so evidently defamatory that the corporations responsible for the Super Bowl halftime show censored it, "No, you threatened to sue them too," communicates that Drake has been found to be a PDF, an assertion that UMG tacitly concedes Drake has adequately alleged at the pleading stage to be false. The same can be said for all the defamatory statements that, read in context, raise the same allegations, such as "You better not ever go to cell block 1, say Drake, I heard you like I'm young, trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor, and Predator moving flocks." And the AC pleads in detail how the associated image and video collectively reinforce that message. Rather than challenging the sufficiency of what the AC actually alleges, UMG's argument attacks an imagined version of a complaint that Drake did not file and relies mostly exclusively on inappropriate uses of extraneous materials. First, UMG tries to brush aside the public commentary expressing belief in the defamatory statements, claiming that the subjective opinions of a handful of people do not factor in to the court's objective assessment of what a reasonable person could have understood the recording to mean. But the AC plausibly alleges that millions, not a handful of people, understood the lyrics as factual, and at this stage, the court must make all reasonable inferences in Drake's favor, not UMG's. In any event, UMG cites no authority suggesting the court cannot consider at the pleading stage real-life examples of listeners believing the truth of the defamatory statements and evaluating whether the statements could have been interpreted as fact. As illustrated above, courts have done exactly that. UMG likewise deems the public commentary cited in the AC unreliable because it comes from anonymous users and contains grammatical errors, slang, and emojis. But the AC does not rely solely on anonymous social media users. Instead, it cites numerous public statements expressing belief in the allegations from the press, commentators, and podcasts. UMG's own extraneous exhibits are in accord. Throughout Not Like Us, Kendrick accuses Drake of having inappropriate sexual relationships with minors. Many of the AC's cited social media comments were not anonymous, and using slang and emojis in online posts about pop culture is hardly unusual. Regardless, UMG again offers no authority for the proposition that the court should discredit the AC's cited online comments in this context, and case law is to the contrary. Here they get into responding to UMG's Rappaport vs. Barstool Sports, where after losing summary judgment, plaintiff argued on appeal that the district court overlooked evidence relating to public comments accusing plaintiff of the misconduct raised in the allegedly defamatory material. The Second Circuit denied the appeal, but without referencing or discussing this particular argument in any way whatsoever. Moreover, the public comments cited by plaintiff and Rappaport are far less compelling than those alleged here. Are you sure? It sounds very similar. Second, UMG argues that the tone of the defamatory material conveys hyperbole and opinion, not facts. That subjective assessment is belied by the countless listeners who think otherwise. But in any event, there is nothing hyperbolic about using mutually reinforcing lyrics, images, and video to brand someone as a certified PDF. Moreover, the fact that allegations of PDF can be understood to express anger or vitriol does not mean that no reasonable listener interprets those same allegations as factual. To the contrary, the AC alleges that allegations of PDF activity tap into a cultural phenomenon whereby listeners are primed simultaneously to believe and be enraged by such allegations. The defamatory material is also unlike the types of communications courts have dismissed as non-actionable opinion. All right. Union recording broadcast only to union members was full of nonsensical and juvenile humor, such as in Barbara's case. Brains aren't everything. In her case, they are nothing. And in times of trouble, she's waiting to catch you, bent over at the right angle. Brian V. Richardson. Yeah. Let's get past some of this bullshit. In these examples, the defamatory material does not cite sources, identify allegations as claims, oscillate back and forth as to whether Drake is a PDF, or express rhetorical questions with qualifiers pointedly. None of UMG's cases involve allegations of PDF activity, and none involved specific factual allegations demonstrating the public's belief in the truth of the allegations. UMG relies heavily on the Rappaport summary judgment decision to support its flawed tone argument, but separate from the fact that Rappaport does not justify dismissal at the pleading stage, the case is readily distinguishable there. The statements that the court found to be obviously hyperbolic included the plaintiff was a 10-gallon drum of curdled milk, a walking blob of jizz, oh my God, a puddle of pudding, and that he looks like a chemo Yertle the turtle. But being repeatedly accused of PDF activity to billions of people is obviously different from being compared to a Dr. Seuss character or spoiled dairy. The former is a precise factual allegation that people immediately understand. The latter is literal name calling. Oh boy. Hold on. The same argument holds with respect to the images in Rappaport. The Rappaport court determined that certain photos, including the cartoon of a life-size cracker walking down the sidewalk accompanied by the terms "you're the cracker honky," were obviously doctored and therefore underscored the non-factual nature of the piece. The court found the same for a cartoon in which the plaintiff was diagnosed with having ding-dongs for brains and had a herp-derp that worked as his manager. Okay, so they're comparing this here from Michael Rappaport situation to Kendrick's Not Like Us. Unlike an anthropomorphized cracker sauntering down the street, the image that appears alongside the recording is an authentic aerial photograph of Drake's Toronto home, and the SO images attached to the home are likewise realistic reproductions of images commonly understood to signify the homes of registered SOs, which is why the average observer understood the image as conveying the false message that Drake is an SO. UMG's insistence that the image is doctored in the sense that it superimposes SO symbols on Drake's actual home only confesses the falsity of the message conveyed, and UMG has cited nothing, particularly at the pleading stage, to justify its subjective view that no reasonable observer would have interpreted the image's inescapable message as factual. Now, what I'm not getting here is I thought that entire lawsuit was dismissed. Or maybe it wasn't dismissed, but it was found in court that Rappaport didn't win. Therefore, all of the claims, if he didn't win, would be tossed, not just specific ones. But again, I'm not a legal professional. I don't know how that works. Okay, that's me making an assertion. an uneducated assertion. You feel me? Third, UMG asserts with no support from the pleadings that a rap diss track is not a forum reasonable people expect to convey rigorous factual content. Whatever weight UMG's argument might receive following cross of whatever witness might offer it at trial, it should receive none here. The AC alleges that UMG's standard exclusive recording contract includes a provision which permits UMG to eliminate material which in UMG's judgment constitutes defamation or libel. The necessary inference from that fact, which must be drawn in Drake's favor, is that UMG itself understands that lyrics and other content within the music it publishes can defame. Okay, once again, they're saying that UMG should have restricted Kendrick Lamar's song to be released if they felt that it had defamatory material. Okay. Moreover, UMG's context argument relies almost entirely on cherry-picked extrinsic evidence, such as lyrics and articles not referenced in the AC, that UMG repackages and weaves into its own subjective narrative. No, that's their response to give further context as to what was going on, because you would try to act like you were just sitting alone in your mansion, eating rice and carrots, you know what I'm saying, or whatever the fuck you like to eat, and this song just happened to drop on your head out of nowhere and just rocked your entire world. Just a pool of bullshit. But UMG offers no authority for substituting well-pleaded allegations with extraneous evidence on a motion to dismiss. I'm actually tired of reading this shit, to be honest with y'all. I ain't gonna hold you. I'm tired of reading this shit. The court denied defendant in Fitosa. The court denied defendant's request for judicial notice on similar facts in response to a complaint alleging a defamatory tweet by a YouTube personality made during a war of words between the two influencers. The defendant's motion to dismiss submitted his own selection of tweets included from plaintiff and a link to a podcast interview to support his version of the context this court should consider. The court held defendant submissions are far broader than what courts normally consider in assessing a statement's context, let alone what courts consider on a motion to dismiss. The court therefore declined to consider the documents defendant submits and will consider the face of the complaint. The same result should follow here. Specifically, the court should decline to take judicial notice of UMG exhibits. So you try to get the exhibits stricken from the record. Or at the very least, consider only the existence of those exhibits and decline to consider UMG's factual inferences based on the content of those exhibits. UMG's alternative would require the court to wade through entire bodies of literature. Well, you want the court to wade through entire bodies of recording contracts, bitch. Why not go through entire bodies of, and it's not even fucking literature, you dumbass. It's little fucking articles, and articles today in 2024, 25, they're nowhere near the level of length that articles used to be once upon a time, where niggas used to write 5-page pieces on people. We're talking about internet shit, like a few paragraphs, nigga. Get the fuck out of here. But this is their response. This is just them trying to say at this stage, UMG's motion to dismiss should be denied, which that's their job to do. That's their job to find loopholes so that they could keep this thing alive. And I don't think that UMG's motion to dismiss is going to be successful. I never thought it was going to be successful, as entertaining as they've been. UMG's alternative wrote blah, 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 effectively fashioning its own expert testimony, addressing the appropriate context for understanding the lyrics of not just Drake and Kendrick Lamar, but of other artists, rap tracks, and articles omitted from UMG's self-serving collection. None of this is remotely appropriate given the court's task to determine whether the AC states a claim upon which the relief may be granted under Rule 12b-6. To the extent the court assesses context at this stage, UMG has done nothing to justify its assertion that the relevant context for all reasonable listeners would be its hand-selected examples from what it describes as years-long rap battle involving multiple tracks from Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Nowhere does UMG explain why the average or reasonable listener would not only understand all of the nuances of this saga, but also understand it in the same way that UMG's lawyers do. As alleged, the recording has been played billions of times to people globally, including to audiences and viewers of the Super Bowl and Democratic National Convention. Thus, as alleged in the AC, the relevant, reasonable listener cannot be artificially limited to devoted fans of Kendrick Lamar's music or those who carefully followed each step of the battle. But what about Drake fans? They know this too. It ain't just Kendrick fans. UMG utterly ignores the AC's well-pleaded allegations that UMG took steps to ensure that the defamatory material became ubiquitous in the general population, while not doing so for any of the other songs in the rap beef. Thus, by its own actions, UMG ensured that the relevant audience for the recording would be different and much more expansive than the traditional audience for a typical rap track. Furthermore, UMG's context argument ignores that most of the AC's allegations of actionable defamation occurred after, according to UMG, the rap battle ended. UMG published and promoted the defamatory material long after it knew how the public was consuming and reacting to that material, which makes this case unlike heated or one-time statements made during a union labor dispute, a public meeting, or by shock talk hosts during a show. UMG's repeated conduct, including licensing deals, social media posts, and agreements to stream and play the recording, are more like the pre-planned and pre-scheduled statements made during a sophisticated and coordinated international campaign, which courts have found to be actionable. Courts have rejected context arguments in similar instances. In Fitosa, the court found actionable a tweet by one YouTube personality directed at another, which stated, "Def Noodles has allegedly groomed girls from ages 12 to 15. Even though it was made during a war of words between the two internet personalities." I mean, that's actually very specific, though. Kendrick made no specific lines that are this direct. In Delgado versus Sonnen, the court held that statements that plaintiff was a stalker made during an intentionally comedic podcast published to the internet were actionable. The court explained that the context relevant to its analysis did not include all previous episodes of the podcast or even the entire podcast episode, but rather the specific podcast segment during which the at-issue statements were made. Even assuming the entire podcast series constituted the relevant context, the statements would still be actionable because the court reasoned the defendant could not be expect to be protected solely because it is an internet publication with a foolhardy reputation that was known for loose, irrelevant, juvenile, and crass behavior. The AC adequately alleges that the defamatory statements are mixed opinion. Dismissal is likewise unwarranted because a statement of opinion is actionable so long as it implies that it is based upon facts which justify the opinion but are unknown to those reading or hearing it. At some point, you just gonna have to concede that he must be telling the truth about you, man. The AC alleges just that. Because what? Here, the defamatory material and pleaded context imply that the allegations of PDF activity against Drake and the defamatory statements have a factual basis that is not disclosed in the recording itself. In the recording, Kendrick Lamar says that the allegations are based on undisclosed information. Say, Drake, "I hear you like I'm young." Yeah, undisclosed information such as those articles and TikToks that were made about you years ago. And rabbit hole still deep, I can go further, I promise. The AC alleges concrete examples of listeners who understood the recording in these precise terms, notwithstanding UMG's claim that the statements are too vague or sound in hyperbole. UMG suggests that the defamatory statements were not mixed opinion because Drake previously goaded Lamar. However, this argument depends entirely on UMG's self-serving and disputed interpretation of the meaning of one of Drake's songs that is not referred in the AC. Why would you refer it in your own complaint? That would be dumb, and is therefore improper at the pleading stage. Even if this court were inclined to consider this evidence without the vital witness testimony that would inform it at trial, as a legal matter, consent for defamation requires far more than a plaintiff expressing an expectation that another party will make a defamatory statement or even encouraging a defendant to do what they had to do. And of course, none of this would erase UMG's liability for continuing its relentless promotional campaign after Drake explained to UMG the harm he was suffering and made his retraction demand. So they supposed to just do whatever the fuck you say. In sum, there are no allegations that Drake consented to or invited UMG to publish defamatory statements about him to millions of people over the course of a year. Finally, UMG argues that the defamatory statements are non-actionable because facts and circumstances concerning Drake's relationships with minors have been widely reported, and therefore the defamatory statements relate to controversies that are widely known. This argument says more about UMG than it does about any legal issue in this case. For starters, as alleged in the AC, UMG does not truly believe that there were serious questions concerning Drake's relationships with minors predating its publication of the recording. Are you sure? Because if it did, UMG surely would have discontinued promoting Drake as one of its most prominent artists. Okay, so now we're going to act like R. Kelly was never a thing. Even taking UMG at its word, its cited exhibits did not come close to demonstrating that Drake was widely reported or reported at all as having engaged in conduct that would make him a PDF or a registered SO. Namely, UMG cites no reporting, let alone widespread reporting, that Drake engaged in sexual relations with minors, such that any reasonable listener would have understood the defamatory statements to be based upon those non-existent reports. They sure got videos of you kissing a 17-year-old though. Let's see here. Where does this sentence actually start? Oh, I'm getting tired of reading this shit. If anything, UMG's exhibits reinforce that commentators understood the recording as making allegations against Drake, not merely repeating prior rumors. I don't know if there's ever been a time where two rap superstars are contemporaries and one is accusing the other of PDF activity, like in the loudest possible way, and we all know the stories of him going to girls' basketball games. But contemporaries, people who are making their record label millions of dollars, right? That doesn't usually happen. And so this level of allegation, maybe it should inspire some sort of investigation. Not sure who said those quotes. The AC adequately alleges actual malice. I'm so fucking exhausted with this shit. UMG addresses actual malice in a single paragraph that merely repackages its opinion in hyperbole arguments. Its argument is meritless. The actual malice standard requires that the plaintiff show the defendant made the statements at issue with knowledge that the statements were false or with reckless disregard as to their falsity. At the pleadings, malice must be alleged plausibly in accordance with Rule 8. Therefore, plaintiff must plead plausible grounds to infer actual malice by alleging enough facts to raise a reasonable expectation that discovery will reveal evidence of actual malice. The motion to dismiss does not dispute that the amended complaint pleads actual malice under these standards. UMG does not contest that it knew the allegations were false, and to this day, UMG does not claim that any of the allegations are true. UMG had a financial interest in knowing Drake's liabilities, including charges or convictions, and UMG would have never contracted with Drake had it believed that any of the defamatory material was true in any respect. The amended complaint further pleads actual malice based on different points in time when UMG published and continued to publish the defamatory statements, including 1. After Drake publicly denied the allegations 1 day after the initial publication, that would be the fart part 6. After Drake's security guard was shot 3 days after the initial publication, which we still don't know to be true. After listeners, music publications, and industry podcasts confirmed the public's understanding of the factual nature of the allegations. And after Drake issued a formal retraction demand detailing the harm caused by the recordings, continuous publication 3 months after the initial publication. UMG argues that plaintiff must identify specific individuals at UMG that acted with actual malice. UMG cites no Second Circuit authority for this proposition. It relies on Hughes v. 21st Century, Fox. But that case cites to a summary judgment holding and a post-trial holding. The Second Circuit in Palin merely observed that the critical question in the state of mind of those responsible for the publication. It did not create a separate pleading standard when the defendant is a corporation. This makes sense because discovery is essential to permit plaintiff to confirm which individuals at UMG were responsible for A, greenlighting the recording, notwithstanding its lyrics, B, greenlighting the image and video, notwithstanding their offensive imagery, and C, deciding to continue to promote the record, notwithstanding the known harm it was causing to Drake. In any event, the AC adequately pleads plausible grounds to infer the requisite mental state of each Lucian Grange, UMG CEO, John Janik, Interscope CEO, Monty Littman, Republic CEO, and Avery Littman, Republic President. The AC pleads that Sir Grange and Mr. Janik were involved in the initial publication of the recording and image, despite knowing that the allegations were unsupported by any evidence and understanding their inherent improbability. The AC further pleads that Sir Grange, Mr. Janik, Monty Littman, and Avery Littman played a key role in the initial publication of the video, either in directing or approving the publication and or failing to prevent its publication, knowing that Drake's Toronto home was attacked, knowing that the allegations were unsupported by any evidence and were being believed by the public, and despite the inherent improbability of the allegations. So now he is going after the higher ups at UMG, Interscope, and Republic. Okay? So he's saying that all of them are at fault for this, for not taking action. They just let the song fly and didn't do nothing about it. So if anybody believes that Drake really wants to stay with Universal Republic at this point, here's your answer. He is attacking, because remember, Lucian Grange was allegedly his rich baby daddy. Monty Littman at Republic, Avery Littman at Republic. Drake has been in bed with Republic for just about as much time as he has with Universal, because Universal is over Republic. You look at his discography, it says Republic. So he don't want to be there no more, especially if he feels that the CEO and the president of the label were complicit in this activity. He wants a payout and he wants to go elsewhere. Okay? He said they played a key role in the initial publication of the video. He's saying even Republic, and Kendrick has no dealings with Republic. Kendrick's dealings are with Interscope, which would be John Janik and Lucian Grange at UMG, which I would think more so Interscope than UMG, personally. But he says they all played a crucial role. That's interesting. Knowing that his home was attacked, knowing that the allegations were unsupported by any evidence and were being believed by the public, and despite the inherent improbability of the allegations, these allegations combined with other well-pleaded allegations demonstrating that UMG knew the defamatory statements were false, pled plausible grounds to infer actual malice on the part of UMG. So this nigga been out here promoting his solo album coming soon. That album ain't dropping no time soon, sir. You finna be wrapped up in this shit till next year. You think they finna green light you to drop more music while you're going at all your top dogs at your company? Yeah, they signed off on a collab with Homeboy, but come the fuck on. The amended complaint adequately pleads a claim under New York General Business Law. In order to plead a violation of New York General Business Law, Section 349, plaintiff must allege that the defendant engaged in 1, consumer-oriented conduct, that is 2, material misleading, and that 3, plaintiff suffered injury as a result of the allegedly deceptive act or practice. All right. So now when we get into general business law, this is where they start talking about payola, pay-to-play, botting. UMG does not dispute the first element. The AC alleges that UMG's scheme to promote the recording and video was directed at consumers of music. With respect to the second element, conduct is material misleading when it is likely to mislead a reasonable consumer acting reasonably under the circumstances. This is generally a question of fact not suited for resolution at the motion to dismiss stage. Here, the AC alleges that UMG financially incentivized third parties, including streaming platforms and radio stations, to recommend, prioritize in searches, promote as top rated or most popular, and ultimately play the recording, all without disclosing its conduct. All right, so they're saying that they were paying for deceptive advertising while not disclosing said advertising, which I think is crazy. It is absolutely crazy, because that's just not how radio works. These deceptive acts and practices, at the very least, raise a prospect that reasonable music consumers would be misled in a material way. That is because reasonable music consumers do not assume that recommended songs, search results, and promoted playlists are the result of the artist label funneling payments or other consideration to the platform through a series of clandestine back channel payments. Indeed, when the New York Attorney General previously charged UMG with payola violations, he explained consumers have a right to not be misled. Bruh, come the fuck on. UMG criticizes plaintiff for pleading on information and belief without a statement of the facts upon which the belief is founded. That is not the rule. Twombly's plausibility standard does not prevent the plaintiff from pleading facts alleged upon information and belief where the facts are peculiarly within the possession and control of the defendant, or where the belief is based on factual information that makes the inference of culpability plausible. Both conditions are satisfied here. The amended complaint pleads that UMG concealed its promotional scheme by making indirect payments through a network of unknown third parties. Okay, so they're saying they're doing back channel under the table payments to get big boy promotion, so they claim. The AC also pleads sufficient factual information concerning UMG's scheme, including examples thereof, contemporary reports, as well as UMG's past practices, because they did have some payola issues in the past. UMG then argues that plaintiff fails to plausibly allege that UMG had actual knowledge of any conduct or accusations concerning Lamar, citing a case analyzing common law fraud. But there is no requirement under Section 349 that plaintiff plead actual knowledge of anything on the part of UMG. Even if there were, the amended complaint alleges that UMG had actual knowledge of its own deceptive acts or practices. Next, UMG attempts to challenge materially, arguing that Drake does not and cannot allege that Not Like Us would not have been an immense success had it not been for the alleged financial incentives at issue. Here they are once again saying, hey man, just because he dissed you don't mean, or just because he dissed you and there was some sort of alleged financial incentive don't mean that this song wasn't going to be big. They say this is a non sequitur. Drake does not allege, nor was he required to as a matter of law, that UMG's deceptive acts or practices were the sole cause of the recording's immense success. Plaintiff need only allege deceptive acts or practices that raise a prospect of materially deceiving consumers, which the AC plainly does, rendering irrelevant the question whether that deception was the but-for cause of the recording's success. With respect to the third element, the AC alleges that UMG's promotional scheme and failure to disclose the same injured Drake. As an artist, Drake suffered pecuniary harm. Artificial streams decrease the unit value of a stream and therefore decrease the amount of royalties paid to rights holders, including Drake. But y'all have no proof of said payments or fake streams. UMG's failure to disclose this scheme, along with its own false statements, fueled the fire. Artificial streams boosted the recording status on Spotify, causing, I gotta entertain myself at this fucking point, y'all, I'm sorry, causing consumers to listen to and prioritize the recording under false pretenses, which in turn tainted the streaming data used to proportionally allocate, and I ain't finna read that shit, dispersed payments, causing Drake additional pecuniary harm. Drake was also harmed as a consumer of music. He was harmed as a consumer of music. Boy, shut the fuck up. UMG contends that Drake's theories of harm are purely contingent on harm to consumers and therefore not cognizable. Not so. While courts have held that a plaintiff lacks standing to bring Section 349 claims where plaintiffs claim loss arises solely as a result of injuries suffered by misled customers, that bar does not apply, whereas here, plaintiffs' alleged injury did not require a subsequent consumer transaction. Rather, it was sustained when consumers were unfairly induced into taking their business from plaintiff to a competitor, regardless of whether the consumers ultimately ever suffered pecuniary injury as the result of defendant's deception. That is, Drake suffered harm through diversion of royalties, irrespective of whether Spotify users or radio listeners also suffered specific pecuniary harm. Dog, you was not going to get the royalties either fucking way. My God. The amended complaint adequately pleads second-degree harassment. Although there is a split in authority as to whether New York law recognizes a civil claim for second-degree harassment, again, because second-degree harassment is a criminal charge, application of the relevant test and the weight of authority favor implying a private right of action for Section 240.26. New York courts use a very permissive standard to determine whether a private right of action exists. The test is 1, whether the plaintiff is one of the class for whose particular benefit the statute was enacted. 2, whether recognition of a private right of action would promote the legislative purpose. And 3, whether creation of such a right would be consistent with the legislative scheme. That test is met here because Drake is a victim of harassment, and allowing him to seek civil relief against UMG both promotes the legislative purpose while complementing criminal enforcement. UMG's argument is entirely circular because second-degree harassment is included in the penal law and therefore police may enforce it. A private right of action is inconsistent with the legislative scheme, but that argument, if correct, would defeat every implied private right of action as in a criminal statute. That weight of authority also favors finding a private right of action for Section 240.26. None of the cases UMG cites analyzes Section 240.26 under the appropriate right of action standard or acknowledges the Second Circuit's decision in Gallela sustaining a civil claim for harassment. As for the claim itself, Drake sufficiently pleads that UMG 1 engaged in a course of conduct or repeatedly committed acts which alarmed or seriously annoyed Drake. Not alarmed or annoyed. With the intent to harass, annoy, or alarm Drake. And 3, which served no legitimate purpose. UMG challenges the intent element, arguing that Drake pleads that UMG acted only with an intent to devalue Drake's music. But intent can only be evaluated by a trier of fact after the record has been fully developed at trial and not in the context of a motion to dismiss at the pleading stage. At this stage, the amended complaint sufficiently pleads UMG's intent to harass based on the volume and, importantly, timing of publications, B, the harmful nature of the defamatory material, and C, UMG's relationship to Drake. With respect to legitimate purpose, to the extent UMG's actions ever had a legitimate purpose, such as financial gain, that purpose was corrupted by at least July 24th, 2024, when Drake's counsel directly informed UMG of the violence and harassment Drake was experiencing as a result of UMG's conduct, harm that UMG to this date has never disputed. Okay? So they say, we came to you to let you know how this was hurting Drake, and you completely disregarded it, although as the company responsible for Drake, you have a responsibility to also protect him. So they say. Finally, UMG's argument that Drake's harassment claim runs afoul of the First Amendment fails. False speech is not protected as reflected by the continued viability of the ancient tort of defamation centuries after ratification of the Bill of Rights. And New York courts often deny motions to dismiss harassment claims involving speech. Conclusion: for the foregoing reasons, Drake respectfully requests that the court deny UMG's motion to dismiss and RJN. Okay, so we've made it to the end. It was a long road, but we made it. And I'll reiterate once more, I don't think UMG's motion to dismiss will be successful. I think this is definitely going to go through discovery and trial. There's going to be a lot to dig through. They're going to really have to evaluate this thing. They can't just throw this out, in my opinion. So I think we're in for a long year of this back and forth situation between Drake and UMG. Ultimately, I think Drake wants to try to prove that UMG conspired with Kendrick Lamar and others to devalue Drake's music, to force him into a less than beneficial contract in his eyes that will be less valuable than his previous, while still maximizing on the opportunity to monetize on Drake's music. In his eyes, he feels like they use Kendrick Lamar as the guinea pig to make it happen, make it seem organic. Okay. And he wants to get nearly $1 billion so that he can leave the label and go do what he wants to do. Probably go over to Santa Ana, where OVO already resides with what is it, Sony Warner, some shit like that. I can't remember. Do I think it's gonna work out that way? No. Do I think Drake is gonna win ultimately? No. But I don't think his amended complaint is gonna get dismissed at this juncture. All right. Let me know what y'all think of all this down below in the comments. Be sure to like and share this video. If this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, become an insider. I will catch y'all on the next one. All right. Much love and respect, y'all. Peace.
King of my city and cul-de-sac. Coming out swinging like soldier rag. Leading my people like quarterback. Boy, I study this shit on my almanac. Had to get up and grind. Knowledge is booming, I'm here to apply. Came with the chip and the dip, it just single the mind. We finna do more than survive. I need my check. Spinning the block for the Gouda. We hitting the jeweler to flood out the net. We don't do beef for computers, I'm straight out the sewer. We come when you rest. Niggas be looking perplexed, so keeping my foot on their neck. No map, I trust my gut for the quest. But drama, I'm fully abreast. I was ready for years and they died of me. All of a sudden they tell me they proud of me. I been dropping these haters like calories. Cross them out, I came back with some boundaries. Stand for my honor, but too raw, no corner. Packing the stick with a drummer. Wanna catch my bad, won't fumble. I done came too far to be humble.